What is going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today is Tuesday, August 21st, 2018. In this video, we're going to be talking about the upcoming Bitcoin futures ETF decision. It is not the ETF that you've probably heard about. There are numerous ETFs. Most of them are not the one that everyone's talking about, considering that's only one of the many ETFs potentially being looked at this year. So this is the article I have pulled up. It's a really good article, and I'll kind of explain everything. So I just want to spend a little time going through that and then kind of jump over to Bitcoin really quick, try and answer a few key questions here. So this article is published on Coindesk.com. It was published by Christine Kim. The vaneck solidx ETF, which is not the one that's going to be decided in 2 days, I believe on Thursday. The vaneck solidx ETF is a physically backed Bitcoin ETF. This one is based on futures trading. And so the article does a really good job of differentiating all of that and everything. So I guess we can just jump into it real quick. So the SEC will decide on 2 proposed Bitcoin ETFs, exchange traded funds, this week. But what are they weighing exactly? So ProShares, the 10th largest provider of ETFs according to CNBC, has 2 proposals in the running, both based upon Bitcoin futures contracts approved by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission in 2017. And then it talks a little bit here about the solidx vaneck ETF, which was delayed until the end of September. That is, again, a physically backed ETF. This one is based on futures. So here it says, it has a little section here about what a Bitcoin ETF is. We can skip that part, but the distinction between the two, a physical and futures backed ETF, is a section I want to look into because there are some differences. There's some people saying that potentially a futures backed ETF will not be as impactful on the price of Bitcoin. When we did see that Winklevoss ETF get shot down, even though it was shut down earlier in the year, when it was confirmed, that did seem to drop the price, and a lot of people covered that, including myself. And it does seem like the price did drop, at least partially, because of that. It was timed very well with that. And so the market seemed to overreact, even though that ETF had been kind of denied already, and it was just kind of like a second motion to try and get it again. However, it was denied, right? So rationality, my point is, rationality doesn't mean that the price won't drop. So my point is, just because the ETF isn't super significant or super important really in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't mean that the price of Bitcoin and the entire market won't overreact. Because we do see that, and we have seen that. We have seen the prices kind of overreact to negative news over the past few months and underreact to positive news. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if something bad or relatively bad, such as, these ETFs getting denied, which is most likely what's going to happen, which again is why I think the price of Bitcoin might not react as much, hopefully. But again, I kind of thought the same thing with the Winklevoss ETF, but that ended up coming with the result of the market kind of overreacting and a significant dump, although it did recover in like a day or two. It wasn't too crazy, but I guess my point here is to not underestimate the impact of the news right now, especially negative news. It seems to be taking a toll on prices of Bitcoin. It seems like the market's very susceptible to this right now. It's very weak. It's very easily influenced, especially negative news, because there's been a lot of great news. There's like an unending list of good news really this year compared to all of the bad news, and yet we're still in a obvious retracement or correction, bear market, whatever you want to call it, and that is playing more of a role than positive news is playing. That is to say, again, just to clarify, negative news seems to be making more of an impact than positive news at this time. Maybe in a bull market, whether it's around the corner or a few years down the road or whatever the case may be, positive news might increase the price exponentially in the future if, during a bull market, kind of like what we saw in 2017, where the market conditions were pretty ripe for upward moves. And with everything coming out, back then I remember around September, like the China FUD, it did put the market into a slight correction for about a month, but then it bounced right back. And then, as we all remember, hopefully, the last 2 months of 2017 were absolutely crazy, and that was also spurred on by futures talk. Primarily, I think futures were like the big thing people were excited about. And I think people have different opinions about the futures now, how it impacted everything. I see a lot of comments, especially on Reddit, about people saying that now Bitcoin can be super manipulated, and it's like not what Satoshi Nakamoto, whether it's a person or a group, originally wanted out of Bitcoin, because it's now being, manipulated, or it can be traded on futures. But I mean, I like to think as well that if that was the case, I would think that the person who created Bitcoin kind of was prepared for that. They kind of expected it, because it is kind of a natural step when it comes to these type of things, especially legitimizing things like this, even though this is kind of a unique case where it's like there's never really been something like Bitcoin or cryptocurrency before. So it's kind of unique in that sense. But really, to kind of give you a perspective of this, if we jump down to the physical versus futures Bitcoin ETFs here, it says here, it doesn't come as much of a surprise that among the 10 Bitcoin related funds that are concurrently undergoing review by the SEC officials in the next 2 months, only one is a physical backed Bitcoin ETF, suggesting most companies are placing their bets on approval of a futures backed trading option as opposed to a physical one. I myself, as well as many other people, think it would be better for the space if it was physically backed. However, that might be, not quite within reach at the moment. I mean, we don't have any ETFs approved for Bitcoin, so I mean, one step at a time, probably, most likely, right? So it says here, Daniel Masters, the executive chairman for CoinShares, explained to CoinDesk in early August, until such time major institutions put their name to cryptocurrency custody, I don't believe a physically backed ETF can exist in the US. I think any futures-backed ETF in the US now has a better chance of being approved. So again, kind of baby steps. If a futures-backed ETF was approved first, or only, as this article seems to state, I don't think only would be the only case, but it seems more likely it's more along the lines of what the institutions, or at least the SEC, would be willing to accept in regards to cryptocurrency. Also, there's a quote here. Eric Balchunas, senior ETF, I hope I pronounced it, Eric Balchunas, senior ETF analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, points out that it's widely understood where the investors have a choice of buying ETF that holds the futures versus the ones that physically hold it. 95% of people go to the physical one. The only time they hold the one that holds futures are if they have to. So basically what they're saying is that, or at least what Eric is saying here, is that the people want a physically backed Bitcoin ETF. However, what we might get right now, if we even get it, would be a futures backed one, not a physically backed ETF. So really the prized possession, if it were attainable, would be a physically backed Bitcoin ETF. But I mean, I think a lot of people would settle for a futures-backed ETF at the moment. Just, maybe to get the ball rolling and get some momentum in the market, get some excitement, switch things up a little bit. If it's a good thing in the long run, I don't think anybody knows for sure at this point. I know there are a lot of mixed opinions on that. He's also quoted here as saying, and adding to that thought, I take the one that actually holds the Bitcoin will be more successful, and you don't have to deal with rolling futures. There could be some costs associated with that people don't like, he added. And then the last section I want to cover here at the end, it's called market impact. It says here, still, one thing is for certain, the market impact of a Bitcoin ETF, if and when approved by the SEC, will be a significant one. Masters, whose firm offers exchange-traded notes for crypto assets, including Bitcoin and Ether, explained how ETFs could effectively enable a new class of participants to invest in the technology. Our customers are individuals, family offices, hedge funds that acquire our products through regulated marketplaces, and often that might be insurance-based or pension-based, appeal to a very traditional set of investors. And that's appealing also to the many crypto enthusiasts in the U.S. who want to see cryptocurrencies move beyond the fringes of the finance industry and into the mainstream. And that's you and I, most likely, unless you are a whale or a huge investor, which would be cool if you're watching this video. But I think that's a smaller chance than if you are just a cryptocurrency enthusiast in the U.S. But it ends here that Balchunas, it's his quote here, if a Bitcoin-based ETF comes out, I would see it getting to probably 5 billion within a year, and then ultimately would be a pretty big product, probably maybe 10 to 15 billion over the next couple of years, and that would put it in the top 10% of the biggest ETFs. However, Master isn't exactly as bullish that the U.S. will move quickly on approving cryptocurrency-based ETFs, adding that the rule set in America is meaningfully more complex. In the U.S., things tend to be a lot more structured from day one. So again, mixed news there, but it all boils down to this. We're only 2 days away from Thursday, and they, as far as I know, they cannot postpone this any longer. The solidx vaneck ETF, which has been postponed until September 30th, I believe, can be postponed more. I believe it can be postponed all the way to February of 2019. And I don't necessarily expect them to come to a decision by September 30th for the solidx vaneck one. Probably, I mean, it's most likely that they'll probably just push it back as far as possible, which again is not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, 2 days away. How this could impact the price, again, I guess I implore everyone to be cautious, because it's more likely that it will be denied than it will be approved naturally. This is a whole new thing. There's not a Bitcoin ETF. It's a whole new area. And yeah, I mean, I think erring on the side of caution is definitely better. So just in my opinion, don't expect that the ETF will pass. If it does, that'll be crazy. It'll be good. It'll be awesome. Who knows how that could affect the price in the short term, let alone the long term. I think it would be awesome, but just for your own safety, I think it's smarter to be aware that it probably won't, or because there's two, they probably won't go through and be accepted. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I mean, either way, I think eventually one of these will come through. And another thing as well, I don't even necessarily think an ETF is very necessary for the future of Bitcoin at all. Obviously, I mean, a lot of people say that as well. But I think the biggest news so far this year is still the New York Stock Exchange backed that project they're working on. I think, again, that could end up being huge. I think that's where real adoption and real maybe mainstream notice would come from, not necessarily an ETF. A lot of people arguing in the comments and in different places across the internet that an ETF would, again, bring more manipulation or whatever the case. But I think Bakkt is really onto something there. I think that's more of a unique, potentially positive long-term thing for cryptocurrency. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel for updates. And yeah, thanks for watching.